Malkit. So let's run through it. So you got 500 tenants at the moment.
600.
600 tenants. 250 properties.
Property-wise, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but it's in terms of properties that we're probably under our control, over 150.
Wow. Okay.
At least, because the thing is, if I, for example, I buy one block, that one block I convert to 10 flats. That's 10.
Okay.
So now I'm just finishing off just this month, 7 flats in 7 flats in High Wycombe. Well, 6 flats in High Wycombe, 1 shop. So that's seven units. So I'm just like focused on the tenants because I don't want to get distracted by numbers and stuff. So then we finished a commercial to 3 flats as well in Reading, and then we just finished an office to 4 flats as well. That's just this month.
Wow.
So I try not to get distracted on numbers. Right. Like you mentioned the tenants, the property-wise, I don't know how to sort of work it out because one title could be 1 property or it could be 10.
True. Okay. So, and sponsor Watford Football Club.
Sponsor Watford Football Club.
Educational courses.
Yeah, it was something that we set up.
Multi-award winning.
Yeah.
Doing pretty well.
No, it's been good.
So, do you ever sit back and just think to yourself, wow?
I do, but I think where we are at the moment, because this has only been in property, say, coming to 23 years. The last 3 years we've been on socials, and that's where we've had the most impact. But I don't think where we are right now is somewhere that is like, you know, if you just sit back and just say, okay, we made it. I think anyone can get to that point. Let's try to do something where you can actually change the industry. So we're probably one of the only developers that have our own financial product with a lender. So we've got something with Octane called a Game Changer, where they've completely changed their lending criteria and stuff for something that for us and our clients. So I want to make changes that benefit people within the industry. Okay. So that's our aim because, again, it's a bit like hip hop with Nipsey Hussle. Like the marathon continues. Like, you know, it's not just this.
Yeah.
Like there should be no limit to what you want to do, because otherwise, yeah, I think if you just limit yourself, your brain sort of switches off, and you know you get complacent. And I think you just need to always have something and always have that urge to keep going.
So then what I'm interested in is so where did that drive come from? Because most people who start off in property, I know you maybe 1 or 2 or 3 properties, but you just kept going.
It kept, well, you can discuss it during the talk, but if you have a look at it, like it's all sort of parent-wise. So like if I look at my grandparents, like they're not from India, they're from a country called Punjab. It was colonized.
Country called Punjab.
Yeah, it was a country called Punjab.
That's a political statement.
No, it was called Punjab. Yeah. So it was the last state country that was taken over by India, and then basically during Second World War kicked off, and they basically said to the Punjabis there that if you back us, we'll give you freedom. And they said the same to the Nazis, said the same to Punjabis as well. They reached out. And so when freedom did come in 1947 after the Second World War, so what was known as our country then had like basically Lord Mountbatten drew a line through it, and then the country sort of split. You had 1 million people moving either way, and like so many murders and so on.
So your grandparents were part of the...
So they were there, they saw all of that being impacted, but then come early 50s, the country's new. So you're now being formed as India, and you know, we're from a farming background, there isn't the money there. I had one of my grandfathers, my mother's dad, he went to Kuala Lumpur to try to find work, and there was nothing there. Oh, wow. And then early 50s, it opened up that they needed workers within the UK. Obviously, they're suffering following the Second World War. So he went by boat for a few weeks to UK, settled in Southall. Same with my dad's dad, in the mid-50s. So you come from that, and like they're literally left with nothing. You know, sleeping on floors on someone's house and so on. So you come from that. I'm like, okay. But then we want to have, like, you want to create something and give back. So one thing that we did this year, you had the Turkey earthquake, and myself and Sanjay said, look, you just want to help out. So we reached out to an aid agency that was working on the ground there. And they said, look, Carl's our aid. So they said, look, there's no point in sending us money because the problem we've got at the moment is getting, like raw materials and stuff to these campsites. So we flew out about 10 hours drive away from the affected area. We organised, steel plates and cups and stuff that people needed and clothing. And then we got like a truck to drop them off. We couldn't go physically ourselves, but we were there. And then just, 2 months ago, we then, the same campsites, delivered 10,000 bottles of 5-litre water to these campsites because they've got no running water that's there. So it's a bit of Jay-Z in it where he says, look, you can't help the poor if you're one of them.
Yeah.
But he goes, I got rich and I gave back. To me, that's a win-win. So it's like, if you're doing something, you can actually make some change, whether how small it is.
So I want to, I want to stick with your grandparents for a moment. So they came to, they settled in Southall. And what types of jobs did they do?
Manual jobs, so it was literally just factory work.
Okay.
Because Southall back in the 50s was literally just all warehouses and factories and stuff. And the reason they were in Southall was it was walking distance. Obviously, if you're poor, you don't have a car. Cars were still early on there, so they wanted somewhere where you can walk to work and walk back, and that's why they settled there. And then
and were your parents kind of entrepreneurial themselves? Because obviously you've become an entrepreneur.
My dad got called over by my granddad at the age of 13, and then when they said how old is he, put down he's 18. So he was just a kid himself, and he got straight to work. He's working on building infrastructure like roads and stuff, and manual work there, and they all grew up having to work 2 jobs. The money he earned, he gave to his dad, and they managed to buy their first house.
Oh, wow.
Where we had basically, my grandfather, grandmother, 5 sons and 1 daughter all lived in this house, a small 3-bed terraced house in Southall.
Wow.
So they come from that, so I'm just like, okay. So my mindset is, okay, we're from this, let's try to create something, and I don't think you should limit yourself in what you want to do.
But as a child, did you, what types of career were you interested in pursuing?
So as a child, my parents then thought, okay, so my brother, so Southall in the 80s, I don't know if you know, but you had a couple of gangs and Asian gangs. And then as an Asian lad, you will then affiliate yourself with either Tootie Youngs or the Holy Smokes that were known back then. And there were people getting stabbed, shot during that period. So it was, community-wise, it was a nice community feel, but you had these gangs and they were just like killing each other. My brother got affiliated to one of them. My dad's like, okay, look, if you're not gonna work and you're just messing around, I'm just gonna buy a shop. You're gonna work in there. So he pulled him out. So we moved to West Drayton.
Okay.
So we ended up with like a grocery off license, convenience store, which my brother and the family then ran. And then my dad bought the fish and chip shop, which was there. So my brother and his wife ran that. And then I moved above the shop, and I'm like in between school. So I'm working in the shop, like after I come back.
How old were you at
shelves.
this point working?
So this was like 10 years old.
Wow. So you're working from 10 years old?
10 years old, like a delivery would come in, I'll have to lift the cases, put them in, put the stock out, price it. Back then it was like price gun as well. So just price gun, bang, 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 and then do my studies. And now growing up, I'm like, I need to do whatever I need to do to not actually be in a shop.
So that was your motivation?
That was my motivation, because it's such a bad life, because the only day that you got off was Christmas Day, and that was only a certain amount of hours. So the shop would open between, I think you could sell alcohol between 11 to 1, and then it'll be, was it 11 to 2, and then it will shut, and then you can sell alcohol again from 7 o'clock. So that was the only period that we can have off. We may go to some family's house or something, but the rest of it was work 7 days. So that's all I saw. So my parents were like working like 7 in the morning to 11 in this business, and my brother's doing this. I'm like, I don't want to do this, and hence I just thought the way out was study, university. But then I did that. So the late 90s, you remember there's a dot-com boom on?
Yes.
So when I was at Brunel, I was studying management studies, so I actually liked the entrepreneurial business aspect.
But what did you want to? So what was your idea in terms of a career?
I didn't know, because literally everybody that I'm surrounded with, so I'm the first person within my family and probably extended family that actually went to university. So with my brothers, so my dad's brothers out their kids, I was probably the first one that went to university. So it's not like you have a bunch of peers where you can just sit with them and, you know, you should go into this. It's different now. Like my child would have access to people that can give him some career advice, where the people that are around me, so the uncles and aunts and stuff, they're just working at Heathrow Airport, doing factory jobs, manual jobs. They're all lowly paid, you know, delivery drivers and so on. So it's hard. And then if you're looking at it like, okay, maybe the career path is to become, do something academic and then find something through job-wise there, because, you know, because parents always said to me, you need to learn what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, let me study. So did that. Dot-com boom was going on. So I'm like, okay, I'm in the wrong degree here. So I did a conversion course, a master's at Bath Uni in computer science. But it wasn't for me. I didn't really like it, but I just thought, okay, this is where the money's going to be. So fast forward 2000, I got the first graduate job in a company in Collinbrook. And 2001 happened, so 9/11 happened, lastminute.com floated.
Yeah.
The economy crashed, and I saw grown men in their 40s lose their jobs. I'm like, okay, shit. Now, I don't want to be in that situation. So 2001, I ended up buying our first sort of buy-to-let then learned how to rent it out myself and so on. I'm like, oh shoot, wow, this is paying more than half of what my salary is. And
But
the
what gave you the confidence to buy a house? Because
so okay,
I mean,
so
you make it
that
sound easy. For a lot of people kind of talk about the idea of doing that.
So what happened there? My business partner, we went out in Ealing. On the way back, he lived around the corner from where I lived. I went into his house. He said, just come in for a drink. I said, okay, sure. He just went to sleep, but his dad was still up. This was around like midnight. He just said to me, Malkit, he goes, you know, buy-to-let mortgages are so easy and stuff to have, because up until sort of Tony Blair sort of time, if you wanted to buy a second home, it would be a commercial mortgage. But they made buy-to-lets being more or less a similar price to, in terms of interest rates, as residential homes. So accessibility was a lot easier, because you didn't have to show how much you were earning and stuff. You just had to have the deposit. And the deposits were actually quite low, because you could buy them for like 10, 15% deposits, some 9% and so on.
Wow.
Some were 95% mortgages and stuff that are out at that time.
Universe.
So I was just like, okay, I had a look at it. I've got this. Speaking to Sanjay's dad, I went straight home. There was no Rightmove or Zoopla at the time, so I opened the Leader, the Gazette, and in the middle you had a home section. I went to what was for sale. There was a house nearby going into auction. It was guided at 80K. I purchased it at 120 in auction. By the time I got it, I called 3 agents down and said, what's it worth? They said, we can sell this for you today at 160. I'm like, wow, I'm only on 18 grand on my grad job, but this has made 40K within weeks of sort of purchasing it. So refinanced that, pulled all my money back out, and then within 12 months purchased 3 properties by just using that strategy.
Wow. But where's the, what gave you the, almost, I suppose, the self-belief to do that? Because as I was saying, lots of people consider doing this, right? But you just went for it.
I went for it because I'm like, okay, this is something, because I was doing so I started my job. So the job I wasn't really actually passionate about, because it's coding. I was only doing it for the money. But growing up, I've been watching Sarah Beanie on Property Ladder, you know, watching all these other property programs, and like, wow, I quite like that. there was a passion for property. I just didn't know why. I just liked it, and I liked the entrepreneurial aspect of it. You have to take a little bit of a risk. And I'm like, if I'm going to take a risk, it's going to be in this area.
Okay. But do you think, a weird question, if you hadn't had that conversation with Sanjay's dad, do you think that you would have still been involved in property?
I think I still would have been involved in property, but it may not have been then. Prior to Sanjay's dad, I actually spoke to someone else who was a friend. I was looking at purchasing a house. I thought, I've started working, you know, the salary wasn't great, but I've got savings in this, and using the buy-to-let, I can actually purchase this. And I went to have a look at it with a friend, but it was a mistake because I'm going to have a look at someone that didn't have the same entrepreneurial spirit as myself, and he just put me off. And that was a year earlier. So, and then now I had someone that actually told me yes. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go ahead with it. Because you're influenced by someone. So if you sit around with 4 alcoholics and they tell you, look, you know, have a beer, you're going to probably have it because everyone else is having it. But then it's the same with you're sitting around with 4 other people that are going to the gym all the time and saying, come, let's just pump some weights. You're likely to do it as well. So I just thought, okay, let me cancel him out. Let me just focus on this and do it. And what's the worst that's going to happen? And
no, but like a lot of bad things can happen, right? I mean, everyone always, you know, could be a property crash, whatever, people have said that for a long time. But, you know, but there are so many things that can go wrong at that particular time. What made you believe that, what made you almost throw caution to the wind at that particular situation?
Well, the caution to the wind was, I've just seen a bunch of guys lose their jobs. And 9/11 happened, literally just after 9/11, the jobs were just going because lastminute.com flowed and so on. So I'm just like, well, would I rather be 40-year-old like this? And I'm in the early 20s. So I think I was about 23 or so at the time. I'm like, if I lose it, I've still got time to make it back. If I'm 45 and I lost everything, it's a lot harder. And you've got kids and a family, and at the moment I'm just living at home. So what is the worst that's going to happen? So I'm quite calculated in the way I look at it, and it's quite logical. So you buy it for this, if I can put it on rent, the mortgage at that time, because I'm working at home, even if I can't rent it, I can still pay the mortgage with my salary. You know, so it just calculated, I'm like, I can't really lose. You know, once I put that in there, then it sort of worked. I pulled the money out and I'm like, okay, let's just go again.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you actually spoke a little bit about, so your business partner Sanj, you've known since when?
11 years old.
Since 11 years old. And have you always been fairly close, or just or kind of did you start off as kind of acquaintances?
No, I think we were quite close. So Mandip I know also, so we all went to school together as well. The thing is, obviously through the colour of your skin, us being in Hillingdon in the school that we were, you're basically bonded together because of your colour of the skin.
Were there lots of Asians in Hillingdon at that time?
Not a lot. So I think there was probably in our year, probably about 7 guys, and we became friends. We used to like at lunchtime, then we were in different classes. We'll meet up at someone's class at lunch, and we'll play cards and have our sandwiches and have a drink and stuff together. But you're sort of bonded by that, because at that time, so if you're talking, so when Bishop sold 89, so you had a lot of things going on in East London, about, you know, because of people's race and stuff. The National Front, British National Party, they were quite rife at that time.
Yeah, particularly in that part of West London as well.
So you were, and you had basically, you had the housing crash as well, sort of that early 90s and stuff, and then people had lost their jobs and people were resentful. And you always had, like, kids at that time was like, just say to you, you come to our country, you take our jobs. And in my head, I'm thinking, you come to our country, you take our country. But yeah, it was just literally that. So you're bonded together because of it, because it may be similar to you as well. You turn up to a networking event and you automatically look for someone that you can relate to in that. So, okay, whether it's someone of mixed race or so on, or someone of colour, like, you know, you're more likely to go to him.
Yeah, you just feel like there's a
blonde,
shared understanding.
yeah, or rather than a blonde, blue-eyed
Yeah.
guy there, you're more likely to go for that one that looks a little bit like you. So and again, it's the same for us at school. And then saying that, then it's also as I went through university and so on. It's only now that, you know, we've come a bit more out of our shell, and I think with the rise of social media, people are seeing people that look different than them. They're following them on TikTok, and you know, they're following the likes of us on social media, and that's now breaking down the barriers. But all of that wasn't there, so the only forms were watching news and newspapers and stuff, and that is most of those establishments are all run by old, rich, white people.
Yeah.
So, and they then dictate on how the news is going to be seen. Now that's changed with the rise of YouTube and socials and so on, and people have their opinions and they're expressing it, and they can do it a lot better. And then hence you've had so many sort of movements and stuff that have come up and that have gained momentum because then people now have the power.
Yeah, very true, very
Black
true.
Lives Matter, because you can now get that trending, and like people then, you may be one little voice, but you can then, you know, if everyone sort of amalgamates together, you can actually make a movement out of it. So, yeah.
No, it's it's interesting because I'm actually quite interested in. So you kind of talked about just being the brown face in a world that traditionally, well, I think for a long time has been quite exclusive to white people. So how how do you almost see how do you see your presence in the property world? How much of an impact do you think it's had on a lot of other people who might see you growing up, coming from a similar community?
So what I found was when I actually started to use socials a few years back, I didn't really see anyone that resembled who I was. There are some people out there, and when I actually went out and met those guys, and I found them quite arrogant, and then I found that they wanted to sort of close the door as well. So they wanted to basically say, look, you know, there's one token brown person out here. I can't let you in because you're going to end up taking my spot. So that's how I saw it.
It's
But
true.
yeah, I'm like,
It is true.
yeah, and then I just found that, okay, look, everyone's being arrogant, the ones that actually have that power and that influence to actually create it. Why don't we just create our own platform and create it where, you know, you're now a positive role model to people out there, and then in particular, like people that look like us. So these kids that are coming up through it, myself and Sanjay both have boys ourselves.
Okay.
So that plays a big part to it as well, because like, who are they going to look at as role models? Within the property industry, there is a lot of brown people in property, but they feel like they need to sort of shelter away. And then like, obviously we've now had to sort of come out, and now we have a platform, like people listen to us, people come to our events. We write in 2 magazines, so HMO magazine, we're writers for the Blue Bricks magazine as well. We've been quoted last year in the Times newspaper.
Wow.
So there's a lot to it. So we're having that influence, and we just want to then have it when people now meet us. I don't want to be how I met that other brown individual within the industry, like being arrogant. Just be kind, give them that supporting advice. And hence we've now sort of moving into that educational sphere as well, where you're creating something which, again, is going against how typically things are in the industry. We're trying to disrupt it. We're making access to good content, knowledge at an affordable price, which will allow a lot more people to get involved with property. And that aspect where we talked about, like, you know, giving them that confidence, that will be there.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to go back a little bit just to talk about how you almost built your team around you, because obviously you've business partners with Sanj, who you've known for a long time. But what made you decide for you guys to do this venture together?
I guess freedom, security. You know, you want to. I think the end goal is always sort of ownership. You need to own something, and that will create that freedom. That will also create that effectively like a passive. What you wanted to do was create a passive income that will actually allow yourselves to have those bits so in your head. So when you're growing up, you're like, I'm going to make some money. I want to be able to go on holiday. I want to be able to spend time with the family, and you know, I want to be able to create like a legacy for, you know, your kids and stuff. So what actually ends up happening is when you start the corporate world, you end up having to work really long hours.
Yep.
And every time you get a pay rise, whether it's that few thousand, they give you more responsibilities, you start losing all those elements that you actually wanted. So,
Very true.
you know, freedom and so on, and all of a sudden you're working weekends trying to fix something because your boss said, I really need this done or by Monday. So you're actually losing the whole reason why you started. So the idea was, if we can create something within property, we can create that freedom. And with property, the thing is, it's a bug. So the more you do, the more you want to try something else. So you always, so we started off obviously just with single buy-to-lets.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, maybe let's just try to like refurb it a little, light refurb, maybe a partition, maybe splitting a really big bedroom into two, and then all of a sudden it was a 2-bedroom, now it's a 3-bedroom house. And then you said, well, actually, why don't we try a rear extension, a loft conversion? So we went through this whole thing.
So is that how you did things, kind of bit by bit?
It was all bit by bit. It wasn't like a big bang.
Okay.
It was quite safe, and then we're always just taking a risk. And then reflecting back and looking at those elements of it, we then like, okay, but this buy-to-let, it doesn't really make you a great deal. So you could make a few £100s once you take your mortgage and stuff. Obviously, once you've added value, refinanced it.
Yeah.
There wasn't a great deal there, and the whole purpose was you want to create an income that if you lost your job, you could be okay.
Okay.
So in 2010, we ventured into HMOs. So we bought a property in auction. We then said, okay, let's now rent it out. It was a former DSS, so social housing, HMO. We then rented it out to private individuals, and we learned a lot of the pitfalls from that particular build. Said, okay, now let's purchase one and let's try to correct it. So we had it in a way where we can systemize it. We made it keyless. We had individual.
So you really kind of just thought about ways to make it efficient, to make the process efficient.
Because we were getting phone calls from this one saying, oh, the lights are tripped. And literally it could be basically someone putting in a faulty toaster, and that toaster basically trips the whole circuit. So then what we did was, when we made our new one, we basically had individual fuse boxes. So if someone has something faulty, it'll only trip the circuits within their rooms. So we then take less phone calls. So the idea was always to scale up and have a lot more of these. So and every project that we do, we always sit back and actually, do you know what, that wasn't right, we should have done this. And like the idea is to make it as profitable as possible, obviously beneficial for the occupants, and to have it where we don't have to spend too much time on the management of it as well. So that was always the process. Then 2013 came, which was a big game changer for us. In 2013, they brought in prior approval rights to convert commercial offices, so anything that was B1A to residential, so you can change it to C3 class. So
yeah, I remember that.
We jumped on that bandwagon very early. I think within 12 months we did 3 projects, but the first project that we did, we purchased some old warehouse offices, but it was B1A, put in one application. We were able to change that from this one big block to 5 separate dwellings, so 2 2-bedroom flats, 2 1-bed flats and 1 studio. And then when we came to refinance this, it got valued at £1 million. Reflecting back, we bought it for 330. I think we spent around 100,000 on it at that time in 2013. And there was a massive profit.
Wow.
And then we were able to sort of do that a number of times on this. And then, yeah, and I think when myself and Sanjay always wanted to create this brand, Savoy's. So in 2013, I think we registered it on Companies Houses. Like,
where'd you get that? Why the name Savoy's?
So this was something we were thinking, because you wanted to have a name that had like little prestige to it, that something that could be remembered. We saw like some people have set up companies based on hotel names, and they sound nice and they stick in your head. Oh, I met these guys, they're from Hilton, or they're from another, like, you know, Dorchester, or something that just sticks in your head. And we had a look, and we went with, obviously you've got the Savoy Hotel, but we went for Savoy's and named it Savoy's Properties further down the line, but initially it was Savoy's Estates. But the problem was, at that time, both myself and Sanjay were still working full time.
I was going to say, how did you guys manage this with a full-time job exactly at the same time?
So yeah, we didn't, in 2013, we sort of parked it up, but then we tried to partner up with 2 other individuals that had more time. But what we found was our goals weren't aligned.
What do you mean?
In terms of how we wanted to see it, because if I start a venture business up, I'll be like, okay, let's come in there. We're not taking a salary from this because we need to start making a profit. Because all of a sudden, if we're taking partners and they're paying them a salary and we don't have any business at the moment, all we're literally doing is I'm working to pay him a salary. So we had that. Then we had one partner that fell out because he goes, unless I get this much as a salary, I'm not doing it. I'm not, effectively not a partner then. Mm-hmm. So he fell out. Then we had someone else that was there, and he was teetering about sort of combining what we were doing. Then he fell out, and then literally we just had this dormant company just sitting there. And in 2019, myself and Sanjay said, okay, we both left our jobs at that point.
Were you still buying properties in between that period of time?
Yeah, we were still buying. Okay. So all the properties that we were buying are either during that period would be in personal names or in some entity name. The idea for Savoy's was just to basically bring everything back in-house. And then, you've got complete control, and then we could slowly sort of build a team. And what I found was people and companies only wanted to really deal with companies. So we found, as Malkit and Sanjay, you'll only get so far with dealing with the likes of Allsop, CBRE,
okay,
other West End sort of companies. But if we create a brand and people know who the brand is, they don't necessarily need to know who the individuals are. So that was the idea with it. So in 2019, we said, okay, let's go ahead 1st of April 2020. But little did we know, 1st of April 2020 was we were going to be in lockdown. And then we've basically told all these agents, you need to move all the management back in-house. And obviously with being in lockdown, people losing jobs and stuff at the time, it's probably the worst time to actually do it. But one good thing was all distractions in terms of going out, having meetings in person, all this was all gone. So like myself and Sanjay just had nothing but time.
And did you quit your jobs at that point?
I know, I quit my job basically 28th of November 2017.
Wow, I remember the date.
I remember the date. The reason being I remember the date because 28th of November 2020, we won Commercial Property Developer of the Year at the Property Investor Awards. So that's why that sticks in mind.
So what made you, so I'm really interested to know why you continued working, or how you managed to continue working and at the same time take on so many properties and manage so many properties.
So the reason I carried on working was, so my wife was saying, well, if you could carry on doing both, just carry on doing both. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. But then it was getting to a stage where I was literally getting up like 6:30. I was in the office for 8 in the city. Obviously, it's about an hour commute in. So it was taking its toll, and then it was still doable. And like I had my business partner, Sanjay, he was working locally, but within the family business, so he could create some spare time for himself. What we always do is try to build relationships with contractors and stuff. So our builders will be with us, so we didn't try to lose them, so they know what style of finish and so on you need. So therefore you need less time to be with them.
Okay.
So that was the idea. So you build them up. It's like you keep everything within the family. So it was all running well until basically I had my son in 2014. My wife was off work for 18 months and then decided to go back. And then what I found was the city isn't that flexible with having kids, because the city just cares about making money. They don't care about you got to go do pickup and so on. So I got to a stage where I think I agreed for 6 months they'll allow me 2 days a week to, finish half days so I can do pickups on those days and I don't get paid my salary. When it came to being reviewed, they said, well, we want you to be working full time, because obviously the colleague that was covering didn't really want to be covering me those 2 extra half days. So basically they said, well, you know, you need to be back in full time. I'm like, actually, no, I don't. And I just basically resigned there and then.
Wow.
And yeah, then I went back home, but I didn't tell my wife for 2 weeks. I thought I need to build this up. But yeah, that's effectively how it was.
Wow. Was there a sense of trepidation at all? Because it sounds like you made quite I mean, had you been thinking about it for a while?
I was always constantly thinking about it because I didn't really enjoy the job. The salary was okay. You know, you came with so many benefits in terms of health insurance and so on. Like for example, if I put in £10 into my company pension, they put in £20. So there was so many perks to it, which encouraged me to do it. But the passion was always on the property side because here I'm taking a derelict, defunct commercial property, for example. You know, we can triple the value of it within 6 months. That was more exciting to me. And you're actually making a positive impact to the local community because you're taking something that's been defunct for a few years and bringing it back into useful use. But it was all just about timing, and it just took that moment. Looking back at it, I probably wish I did it sooner.
Okay.
Because when you do that, when I came out of my job, I'm like, okay, now I don't have this salary. I need to just do more. So in terms of the number of projects we had, I doubled them. So if we were doing 10 projects in a year, we're doing 20 now.
Wow.
Like, okay, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
But saying that, so when we went into lockdown in 2020, I had 10 sites on the go at that time, and we were doing our biggest site at the time as well. So we bought this office block in Burnham, it was a Buckinghamshire home county. We were converting that to 10 flats. And then we had another 9 projects on the go.
Wow.
And with a lot of development finance, the finance company doesn't release the money to you unless a surveyor comes out and verifies the works have been completed. Surveyors weren't instructed by banks to go out because they were waiting on government guidelines on what's required and so on. Even if the property was complete and was completely empty, I couldn't get a valuer out. So cash flow then just shrunk. Luckily, we somehow got through those 3-4 months of being in lockdown. Building work could still continue, but it was just harder to get materials. I remember
the government had allowed building sites to continue, but it was just really difficult to get concrete and
couldn't get anything. So, like, for example, it was the first time my builder saying, we're finishing some sites, he goes, I can't get tiles. And I went on Victoria Plumbing, and they had tiles on there. And I'm like, the place that you would never go, and the tiles weren't a great colour or anything. And I need to finish this project. So literally we went ahead, and I was buying materials and stuff for my builders and so on, trying to get them delivered. I don't think I've ever used Screwfix delivery service as much. But yeah, it was surreal, but we had no choice. Success is our only option in this bit. And, you know, this is what we had to do to succeed. I was so chuffed that we basically took this office block I purchased for 670. I spent £500,000 on it. We started during lockdown 1. I finished in lockdown 3. It got valued at 2.5 million. So it was the most amount of money that we've ever made. I was so chuffed we put it into the Property Investor Awards. The whole thing was recorded and put on YouTube at a certain time. So then I remember I went round to Sanji's house and we were watching this in lockdown, and we ended up winning. Wow. And then when we won, it was the first time they put our faces were sort of out there.
Okay.
So they put it on websites and their socials, and then I ended up having messages from some cousins, oh, congratulations on your win. Because up until then, no one knew that Savoy's was our company. We didn't really have our faces out there. And myself and Sanchez were like, okay, let's embrace change now. We have to get out there, just put our face a bit more out there. Don't be scared of putting yourself out there. And that sort of helped me coming from an introvert to an extrovert.
So is that probably your most memorable project? Was there a project that you completed that you really, that kind of almost changed the level of confidence you had in your ability?
It's this one, because this particular site, when I was walking around it, everyone was saying, well, it's up at like 700K, yeah, but you only can get 5 flats in this and so on. But I'm like a student of the game. So if I study something, I want to ensure that I know every element of it. So under prior approval, I understood it includes the whole fabric of the building. So I was able to use the undercroft. I was able to utilize the loft area as well. The loft area didn't have enough height in it, but when I looked on the first floor, I knew if I just drop everything down, all of a sudden I'll be able to create another 2 foot in there. All of a sudden, you know, we've got 2.2 meters head height, and that's enough to actually have 2 flats in there. So where most people saw 5 flats, we saw 10. And yeah, literally that was the one where it changed for us, because I'm like, actually, you know, I've got the confidence to do this, and if we can do this basically during a pandemic, you know, then anything's achievable.
So, but do you have a project that went spectacularly badly, or a project that you completed and you thought actually it hasn't gone so well?
We have some, the ones that I would say that haven't gone so well is if we just tried a new builder.
Okay.
And where it may not go so well is like the quality, certain elements of quality and stuff, and going over time. But I haven't had one, touch wood, that literally just gone completely wrong.
Okay.
So the only time I consider it wrong is if we've gone over time, because obviously if you go over time, we're on bridging rates. This all adds money to the end result, and it could impact your exit strategy. But thankfully, like, it hasn't gone so wrong. As we said before, if I get someone that's a good builder, I'll ensure that we constantly give them work. That continuous work just ensures that, you know, I don't need to be on top of them as much as if it's a new builder.
Yeah, very true, very true. No, that makes sense. So then, on a day-to-day basis, what does your day look like? How do you kind of plan your time?
So we've now sort of branched out. We've got, I think we're at eight members of our team. So I mainly look after the administration side, so from, like, you know, the finance stuff and bill payments and so on. So it's not really that sexy, but it's the necessity bit. And then in terms of the lettings and project management stuff, so we've got a team that look after that.
Oh, that specifically manages that now. Okay.
Yeah, so we use certain things like WhatsApp groups and so on, and they just show pictures on the progress, so we can gauge when we need to sort of turn up on site. The most difficult aspect, I guess, of what we're doing is we've built up 600 plus tenants that are in-house, and they say this month we'll probably add maybe 15 more tenants to, you know, the management side of our business. So that's the complex side, but then we've grown that team, and it's quite stable. We brought in a bookkeeper now also inside, which does a lot of the auditing for us, but then also the statements and so on that need to be provided to send to landlords. So we're evolving constantly.
Yeah, sounds like it. Well then, how do you kind of manage your own personal time? Because obviously you have a family.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you do this full time now, but how do you manage to balance?
So yeah, so typically how it would work in the morning is, so my son, I'll get him ready, drop him to school, and depending on my daughter, she's 2, so if she's going to nursery or not, so I'll drop her as well, and then go straight to the gym.
So you find time to exercise as well?
Yeah, I've actually.
Is that a new thing, or has that been fairly consistent?
I've been doing it consistently, well, but not actively as hard. But then I actually got on the scales last month, and I was 105 kg, and I've always sort of been floating.
Well, you're quite tall though, right? How tall are you?
I'm probably just 6'1" or so.
6'1". Okay, so.
So, but then I'm like, I used to always be sort of 90 to 95.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, I signed myself up to a half marathon.
Is this recently you've just done?
Yeah, so I signed myself up.
Which half marathon are you doing?
The big half.
Wow, okay.
So it's going to be in like Tower Bridge ways.
Yeah.
And then I started running every day. And then within 1 month, I lost 15 kg. So I went down to 90 kg.
Amazing.
So I'm like, okay, so now I'm going to I just need to set myself something to work towards to maintain that. So yeah, so gym, then work, and dependent on my wife's work schedule, I either do pick up or not. And then yeah, just working with the team during the day.
Okay.
But our aim is to sort of inspire people that work with us and allow them to flourish as well. So From lockdown, we've built up a development arm, which we do client projects as well.
I've seen that.
Yeah, so
Very impressive.
we've ended up bringing on a partner there. So it's someone 10 years younger than us. So Hardeep. So he typically looks after that. We're part of that, and that's gone really well from the start. So we're constantly delivering projects. So even this month, we've got that Reading office to residential project, which is now complete. And we brought him on as an equity partner in that. What we found was you don't really want to occupy too much of your time. Like, it's not about, I want to keep all the money. It's fine to give something to someone else, because how much is enough for you?
Yeah.
Because you want to, the most important aspect is you want to free up time. Because time is where you're actually rich. It's not about what you have in the bank. It's whether you can go away, whether you can pick your son up from school, you know, those elements where you can go see your sons play during school time. That's where the rich element comes from. So we've got him on that bit. Lauren's joined our team as well. So Lauren's a female that's been in construction for 18 years. She's never worked for someone in her life. She runs her own skip company. So probably one of those first, probably one. It's hard to work out whether she is the only one, but if she is, she's one of very few female owners.
Yeah, I've never come across
in waste management. Yeah, and she also started a business, took on a business that from scratch, single-handedly ran it, and it was sold to Balfour Beatty 2 years later for 1.5 million with no debt during lockdown. So she's sort of come on as a partner. She helps on the management side and the project management side as well of our business, and we're hoping for next year for her to come out of her shell a little bit, because I think her story is really amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's here to help us that side, and she helps out also on the social media aspect of it as well.
And so so what I find is interesting is at the same time as you want to, you're creating space for yourself. And I think what you said is really, it's really significant about having time. But then at the same time, you're just doing so much. I mean, you've started an educational program. Obviously, you're doing your events, which would be great for you to talk about. You're obviously now sponsoring Watford Football Club. I mean, it's you're
there's
expanding.
There's a lot going on, but it's not necessarily that we have to be so hands-on with it. So I think it's a aspect of sort of leveraging what you're doing. So people, what I found was they want to learn from us. We have so many people saying, can you mentor us? But mentoring is not something that we want to sort of get into. But, we're happy to teach what we've learned during the years, a couple of decades in property.
Is that coming in the educational program that you're...
That's all in the educational side. And what we said was, okay, we don't want it to sort of impact our sort of day-to-day and like weekends and so on. We've done physical courses, but what we found was, we needed to basically bring so much labor in. So for us to do a course and bring in the right people and to give something that we feel proud of, it will probably require at least 10 of us to sort of be involved. So myself, Sanjay, Hardeep, we may have to bring in our broker, bring in someone from the lender. If it's a HMO thing, bring in a HMO officer. All of a sudden, you're bringing so many people in. What we then decided was, okay, let's now retake this online, because what we found was we'll have someone from Manchester messaging saying, oh, you're going to do a course in Manchester and so on. So we said, why don't we lower the price point, bring it online, but then use technology in terms of interactive virtual tours of a property before it was finished, before we started it, once we finished it, and have those aspects and bring in those great speakers and have this all online. So we've got like a crash course, which is a day, something you can do within a day. We've got now going live a 12-week intensive course, and it literally covers every aspect of doing commercial to residential. And then we brought in guest speakers from like lenders, solicitors, brokers, and so on. So you get that overall balanced education of what it takes. And it's to basically allow people to go out there and then also flourish as well.
And what gives you the the drive to keep adding these different components on?
I think it's like the thing is, within life, if you like basically something, so if you go into that, so we liked property, so we went into purchasing and renovating properties, but what you then find is it's easier to just create different streams off that same bit that you like, rather than, okay, look, I like property, but also like boxing management, let me try to go into that. So, you know, we've gone into, so we've gone into,
That is the Wild
property.
West.
Yeah, and then, you know, you can create your own management side from there. So it's easier to stream off, and you can make multiple streams from the same thing that you like. So, but the key element is that you're offering something of value to people out there. We also have a lending arm as well.
That's I find is really fascinating, because that's what was the reason behind that?
So what we did on the lending side was, there were some directors of bank which left, and they were going to set up their own bespoke bridging lending company. We bought shares into that, so we had, I think it was like a 20% stake within that business. But then we had money that we pulled out from projects, and we said, well, how can we lend this ourselves? And they said, well, we could probably create like this mezzanine lending service where you can give it to us and we can lend it out and so on. And it's something quite unique, whereas most lenders will only lend 75% of the purchase. But some individuals have the experience, but they literally just need that extra 5% or 10%, or in some cases 15 or so on. So we were basically providing that mezzanine amount of lending, and we did that over the course of a year and a half. But when we went into lockdown, the lending company that we actually had shares in, they only had one source of lending funding.
Okay.
That then got lost because with with lockdown and the pandemic, a lot of organizations didn't know where to go. So then that company was basically dissolved. So we then basically had our little lending company left. We said, okay, it was named after the parent company. We said, well, this is ours. We just renamed that to Savoy's Lending. And then we thought, okay, as we're now going to be helping our clients, and some of them had the same situation where I've got enough money to do the purchase, but I'm 20K short on the build, on 50K, so on. So we thought, okay, let's go in here. We can actually help these individuals out, because if you want to be successful, I find that you need to be resolving people's problems, and that was one aspect of it. We teamed up with our broker, so then if we have any funds that are outstanding, and if he has a client that needs maybe like a mezzanine funding, or a client that's going through some hardship, for example, getting divorced and he's missed a couple of payments, but that was just because he was going through depression, but you can see the project makes sense and so on, we'll lend to him. So we've done that, and since we've had it, we haven't had a loan that's gone bad. So it's something, and for us it's a learning process as well, because if you have a look at some of the richest people that are out there, one thing they actually do is they're involved in lending, because lending is probably one of the most passive sources of income. So you lend it out, you've got it secured on an asset. If the loan turns bad, they pull in that asset, and they're just concerned about getting their 70 or 75% back. They're not concerned about selling that property for example, if it's worth $1 million, for selling it for $1 million, or sell it for $850 or 800, as long as they get their 750 back. So it's a learning process for us, but it's just a way where we're actually giving back as well, and we're resolving people's problems.
Well, this is the thing, is that a lot of what you've said, or almost everything you've spoken about, is about kind of building a team behind you, is about supporting people who are really interested in the industry, or people who are building themselves. And I know you've spoken a bit about your background, and that's a motivator. Has there ever got to a point where you felt like I don't have space for that particular element, for the I suppose the charitable, the supportive side of your business, or is it always something that's inclusive in everything that you decide to enter into?
Yeah, I guess it's all inclusive. It's basically, obviously, we have to remember where we came from, so it's quite poverty sort of based. So,
but not everyone who comes from poverty has that similar type of attitude.
Well, the thing is, not everyone that's from poverty gets to a position where they can actually give back.
Okay.
Because if you remember, if you look back at if you're a kid, if I make money, I'm going to go out, I'm going to help my friends, I'm going to do this. Everyone has that when you're growing up. It's just literally, it gets lost as you go through. So for us, we have to stay grounded, and you have to remember, like, who you are, where you came from, like where our parents came from and the hardships and stuff they've gone through. And it's also based on our faith. It's like, from being from a Sikh background, like giving back, so it's called seva, that's built into our beliefs. And you have to, there's no room for ego or anything like that, and you should be constantly just giving back through the course of your life, regardless of how much money you have, whether it's £1 or £10 or £1,000 or so on. That is enshrined in us.
Wow, that's so then that leads on to another question I have, which is about we spoke just off camera about you being an introvert and having to almost manage that. I mean, particularly when it comes to developing teams around you, but also with social media. How have you found that whole experience? Do you feel like you're changing almost that particular personality type, or are you still the same person?
I'm still the same person in terms of our outset and what we're out to sort of achieve. I think in life you just have to embrace that change, and now life, whether you like it or not, is all social media based. Social media is like a massive element of having a business. So you have to embrace change. I've had to sort of adapt, get out of my comfort zone, learn how to present and talk and get our views and thoughts and so on over. It's just something that I had to do, but it's not something that I was initially comfortable with doing. But again, with the event side that we're doing, I need to go out, I need to speak to people, and I have people that come up to me that like look up to us, and even when I've done talks, people come up to you afterwards and like, I really admire you, really inspiring me to do this. And if I don't know how to get the words out to sort of then say something back that is going to encourage them, it's a problem. So it's just something that I've had to sort of evolve with, and we're still sort of learning. And it brings other opportunities as well. So people have reached out to us. You can bring some potential collaborations. Met some people that we've watched and we've admired, like from footballers to like actors and so on. So I think it's a powerful tool.
Yeah, you're enjoying it.
I am now.
That journey.
I didn't really initially, but yeah, I'm enjoying it now.
And so I've got a couple more questions to ask. I suppose, firstly, what does the future hold for Savoys? So
for myself and Sanjay, we don't really have like a target. Like we've always said, it should be, don't limit yourself. So there's no limit. Is if someone suggests, if we had a conversation, you suggested a particular collaboration or an idea, like nothing's off the table. I think that's quite key. And for us, it's not something that we're going to stop. Like it's not like, okay, once I've hit this many tenants or this many properties, I'm going to stop and retire. It's something that we're quite passionate about, and I think it keeps the brain revigorated. It keeps us young, feeling active, and so on. So there's no limits. There could be potential other spin-off elements of the business where we may create, but it's something that we're keen and passionate with. We're keen to see where we can actually take it, because obviously we've mentioned we're just two boys that have come from Southall, and most people that are from the backgrounds that we come from, their aspirations are to be, working for British Airways, working in the airport, and so on. So for us, it's uncharted territory. So there isn't many people that I can speak to that are from the same background and in a similar position. So it's nothing's off limits. We're enjoying what we're doing, and like we'll embrace the changes that come our way.
And if you were, this is more direct to the younger people who'll be listening to this. If you just come out of school now today, but you were interested in getting involved in property, what would you do? How would you begin?
I would say basically do it the same way that we did it. You come out of school, get some level of education, go into work, save that money, maybe have a look at collaborating with someone once you have a pot of cash, because you combine that together, maybe do like a joint venture. You know, if it's something that you want to hold together and you can see a journey together, sit with like myself and Sanjay, then pursue that. If not, look at doing a flip where you purchase that property, you know, you do it up, you sell it, split the profit, build up a big enough pot. Have a look at stuff like infrastructure, whether it be railways, tube lines, HS2, motorways like the M4, M40. Follow that line to an area where your pot of money can actually purchase something, and you can then have an impact in that area and then start from there. So we were really successful with purchasing down the Crossrail. So we picked in the late 2000s when that was all going on. Well, actually, we had mid-2000s Crossrail. So we picked West Drayton.
Okay.
And we heavily started investing in West Drayton, and people used to laugh at us for investing in West Drayton.
It was horrendous.
It was horrendous, yeah.
It's a horrible place to live back in the 2000s.
I say, you remember it from being local.
Yeah, I stayed there when I was in Brunel.
Yeah, so it's the worst place. And I remember speaking to an agent in the 2000s saying, you know, I'm buying West Drayton, it's up and coming. And he said to me, listen, mate, I've heard it called many things, up and coming isn't one.
No, listen, I remember there was a guy, because I used to live above, it was like he sold fruit and veg, he was from Portugal. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, what are you doing here? You could be in Portugal right now and you're in West Drayton in probably one of the most depressing parts of London.
Yeah.
But,
it's changed a lot since then. Like, you know, you can see the new buildings and stuff that come in, but infrastructure does that. So people don't move to West Drayton saying in 5 years' time, I'm going to be able to travel to Bond Street in 15 minutes. You move there once the infrastructure is in place, same as like Stratford, where we are today.
Yep.
It's exactly the same. So as soon as infrastructure comes in, the people change. Now the area starts getting gentrified. You end up with private money moving in as well. So from bigger corporations to like smaller investors such as ourselves, and the local councils then start regenerating parts of it. So it comes, but I think you can do that now. The opportunity is having a look at HS2.
Okay.
Because it's going to be the same thing. The line's going to be built. You just have to pick an area. We're going to have quick links into like Birmingham and then later on to the north, as well as London. So it'll be, I think that's going to be the next hot thing.
Okay, that's good advice. And a couple of other things. Firstly, what's the best piece of advice that you've received in your life?
I would say, like, I read it on a bumper sticker, so I didn't really receive it. But back in the 90s, I remember I was stuck behind a car, and it said, "Life without risk is a risk itself."
Okay.
So remember when we went back and said, "Why did you go and purchase that property?" Because I just saw that. I remember seeing that sticker. I'm like, what if I don't take that risk and do it? Because there's always doubt. You've always got doubt in your head, and it depends on who you speak to. So if you speak to someone that's a bit more optimistic, a bit more of a risk taker, they're going to encourage you to go down that route. But if you're going to speak to someone a bit more risk averse, he's always going to put you off. So it's that is your call to sort of make there.
Wow, very true, very true. And how can people find out about you? How would they get in contact with you on your socials?
Yeah, we're most active on Instagram, so Savoy's Properties, LinkedIn, and we've got our team now putting stuff out on TikTok as well. So.
TikTok as well?
Yeah,
So you've
Savoy's
got a bunch of
Properties.
14-year-olds doing stuff.
Yeah, we've got like a young grad, and he's basically, it's the same content, but he's repurposing it for TikTok. And I'm just like, okay, we're quite busy now on these platforms, so he takes care of that for us. But yeah, it's actually amazing how many people then come up to us when we go to like birthdays and sort of family events and stuff. So I'm watching your stuff on socials. I'm like, okay, wow. Yeah, it's the place for us to find us.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Malkit, genuinely inspirational. Yeah, I'd advise everyone to check him out. Check out everything on Savoy's. They're doing amazing stuff, very inspirational. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Cool.